Hi, Alan Schimmel, DevOps.com, here at the DevOps Enterprise Forum, and I'm here with Mirco Herring of Accenture.
Nice to be here, Alan.
Thank you for coming. So Mirco, you're presenting here at DevOps Enterprise Summit 2015. Why don't you tell our viewers a little bit about what you're presenting?
Yeah, so I've presented a talk about DevOps for systems of records. And that came from attending here last year, and not a lot of people talking about that type of an application. So there was a lot of talk about digital, there was a lot of talk about the custom development part, and I haven't heard a lot about Siebel and mainframe and so forth. It's a bit different this year, but I wanted to add my experience to that.
And well, you know what, and it's good that you did actually. We spoke a little bit actually earlier with Rosalind Radcliffe of IBM, who speaks a lot about systems of records versus systems of engagement, and this sort of two-speed IT, if you will. And I'm wondering, do you have a lot in sort of common with her outlook on these things, or what's different?
Absolutely, yeah, very much. So I spoke a bit about the multi-speed IT as well, and really, I mean, we all aspire to one speed, really, really fast. But reality is, you can't just ditch your legacy systems. So you will have to do some work in that space. And what really resonated with me this morning, when she had her talk, was a whole discussion about it's possible even with mainframe. And actually it's quite easy with mainframe in some sense because it's custom code.
Yes.
Some of the stuff that I work with, Siebel or SAP, you don't even know where the code is. Right? So I was really delighted to hear her talk this morning because that was the other aspect that I might have wanted to talk about but didn't. So she covered that very well.
And it's good between the two of you then that we do a lot of systems of record kind of
exactly.
stuff. And Mirco, you mentioned you were here last year.
Yeah.
And this year, obviously, there's at least twice as many people. But beyond that, what do you see as the biggest difference last year to this year? So,
for me, the difference this year is that people are talking a bit more about bringing it really in the enterprise. Last year, my feedback was to Gene that it felt like people are talking about their pocket in the organization. And this year, we hear a lot more about organizational-wide cultural change. The other bit that I hear a lot more this year, and I don't think we yet have the answer, is metrics and measures.
Yeah.
Right. So how do we really measure the success that we have? And the end point of my talk was, if someone can tell me how we can monetize speed, if someone can tell me how I can make a financial number out of that, we are really onto something. But no one has done that yet.
To comment on each of those things, Mirco. First of all, I think last year it was true that DevOps was making beachheads and pockets within organizations, but there weren't many larger enterprises that saw this enterprise-wide sort of transformation. Where this year, I think that is one of the big differences. This year we are seeing enterprise-wide transformations that those beachheads have expanded, right? And then secondly, you're dead on, I think, with your metrics and measuring. We recently did a survey on the real value of DevOps.
Yeah.
And we were trying to get, are people measuring their ROI on DevOps and DevOps tools and DevOps practices? And what the data seemed to indicate is that at a gut level, people intrinsically felt that doing more, faster, automating, of course, was going to make them more efficient, more profitable, more everything, right? But when you ask them for hard numbers, what was the ROI?
Yeah.
What was the return? What was the delta? They really didn't have them yet. Yeah. And they were still, and I think that's part and parcel. I saw this with open source software in the security business 12 years ago, where people said, yeah, it's free software.
Yeah.
And they didn't understand total cost of ownership.
And that's the same thing that comes back here, right?
Yeah, well, what's old is new. Nothing ever changes in some regards, but DevOps does.
Exactly, and everyone has been talking about technical debt and how do you actually measure those things. And we haven't solved it in Agile, now we're trying it again in DevOps.
But we'll get there,
I'm sure
hopefully.
We do. I'm sure we do.
So besides Rosalind's session you mentioned in your own, what were some of your other favorite sessions here?
So I really enjoyed Jess's session yesterday about architecture. When I speak to clients, it's usually at the end of my talk, I say, and there's a dirty secret. The application architecture plays a huge role in your DevOps transition, and it's the hardest bit.
Yeah.
Right, and I think Jess really talked to that. He talked about continuous integration being one of the hardest practices. Again, I completely agree. And it's one of the most misunderstood practices.
Okay,
right?
I agree. And then Mirco, as I mentioned earlier on, you're with Accenture.
Yeah.
And one of the nice things is, we've had people in here from PwC and now Accenture, IBM and HP, large service and
Yep.
consulting organizations. How is Accenture? Are you helping your clients lead this transformation? How has DevOps affected Accenture's go-to-market?
Yeah, it's playing a huge role, to be honest. So, I mean, I've been working in this space my whole career, right? So, but the difference is, in the past it was quite difficult to have a client conversation around how to do the IT well, because they were only after cost, and cost usually measured by day rates. How much does your developer cost me? With the event of DevOps, what has happened is that people start want to talk about DevOps, and they're more open to different models.
Yeah.
They're more open to talk about the right practices and doing it well versus how cheap can you be, right? Because quite honestly, with DevOps, it's not about how cheap the developer is, it's how little work I can do to get the outcome, right? The first thing you automate are the things that are manual and doesn't require a lot of skill. So the cheap labor is the first thing that goes away. And I do think that we really have an opening with that now, and quite honestly, all the conversations with clients add some level of DevOps now in it.
Really?
Is it always well understood?
Not yet.
Not sure, but certainly people have interest in it, and I think that's a good first start. And then if we bring the right conversation from our side, I do think we can help them get some good outcomes.
Agreed, I agree. Okay, Mirco, we're going to wrap up. I want to thank you for presenting at DevOps Enterprise. Thank
My
you
pleasure.
for coming in and talking with us. Also want to thank you for contributing an article to DevOps.com. It was very well received. We got good feedback.
Thank
Hope
you.
to have more from you in the future.
For sure, yeah.
And enjoy the rest of DevOps Enterprise Summit.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com.